the chair, and we'll start with roll call.
Commissioner Beach.
Yeah. Thanks.
Commissioner Beach. I don't think she's checked in with us yet. Commissioner Freeman.
I'm here today.
Commissioner Herndon.
Present. Good afternoon.
Commissioner Harris.
Present.
Commissioner Lehman.
Here.
Commissioner McPherson.
Here.
Commissioner Norton.
I'm here.
Commissioner Perosa.
Present.
Commissioner Lewis. Commissioner Miller.
Present.
Commissioner Przanski. And Chair Solomon.
Here.
Looks like Jessica is just joining us.
Great. Do you want to get her officially on the
Yes,
roll
so
call?
Commissioner Beach, did I see that you were able to get signed on?
Yes, I am present. My apologies, technical difficulties.
Excellent. Glad you could make it. And want to extend a hearty, warm welcome to our newest commissioners. Commissioner Miller is joining us today for the first time, and Commissioner Herndon. All right. Jenny, do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
We do not, no. And also, don't forget, I don't know if we had opportunity to introduce Commissioner Lehman last time.
I think we did.
He was here. He was here with us last time, but maybe
Yeah.
not in an official capacity.
Indeed. Well, welcome, Commissioner Lehman. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. Our first item of business is, pull up the agenda here, the Phase 2 County Formula Grants for the Behavioral Health Deflection Awards. And I believe Casey's going to walk us through those.
Indeed, it'll be my pleasure. Getting this set up. All right, are there slides visible?
They are.
Okay, fantastic. 1 second here. All right. Well, good afternoon, commissioners. For the record, my name is Casey Beck, and I am the CJC's Behavioral Health Program Manager. As Chair Solomon mentioned, our first objective, you'll be with me for 2 objectives that require your attention today, but our first objective is to review and determine whether to approve the 2025 through 2027 BHD program Phase 2 county funding requests. So to get to those award decisions, I am going to give a process overview and timeline glimpse. Then we will take a look at the funding table and take any action that this commission wishes to make. I am very pleased to present you with an orientation to the BHD solicitation process timeline for the last time of this year. You are at the commission meeting in yellow at the far right, which aligns with the last step of the Phase 2 solicitation process, the Phase 2 award decisions. There were many steps that got us to where we are today, but specifically, I'd like to recap the Phase 2 process, represented by that salmon pink-orange color at the bottom of the slide. And it's worth mentioning that you could not get to Phase 2 without Phase 1, so as a reminder, in September and October, this commission reviewed and approved 26 program proposals representing 27 counties. As part of Phase 1, applicants outlined their program proposals for the entire biennium. The budgets they submitted as part of Phase 1, however, only represented what could be operated with their Phase 1 allocation. The CJC received the county's participant population projections in September and developed various formulas for commission consideration. And then this commission met on October 21st and came to a decision around a Phase 2 formula and approved the county formula funding table. That table was then shared with grantees the very next day on October 22nd, with explicit instructions that counties should submit a Phase 2 budget projection reflecting operation of their program for the entire biennium, and with a total funding request that did not exceed their county allocation, as shown in the approved funding table. Staff then held an informational session for grantees regarding the Phase 2 application process on October 27th, a recording of which was sent out to all grantees on October 28th. And the application was open through November 12th. So all 26 Phase 1 award recipients submitted budget projections as part of Phase 2. So everyone's continuing and needs a bit more money to do so. Staff reviewed all of those submitted budgets for alignment with previously approved program proposals, including approved pathways for deflection. In addition to our normal review, which reviews for any administrative flags, such as missing narratives, incompleteness, ineligible expenses, exceeding 10% in admin and direct costs, etc. Staff then completed outreach to programs whose budget projections required such additional information or clarification. Application materials and a summarizing memo were shared with commissioners on December 3rd. And if updates were made to budget projection sheets in response to staff outreach, those updated versions were uploaded and made available to commissioners in the Google Drive folder as of December 8th. So that brings us to our finish line today with our checkered flags, where hopefully this commission will review those Phase 2 funding requests and make award decisions. Our goal is to send out contracts soon so that these counties can complete their contracting processes and get their additional disbursements to continue on with their programming. So this is the applicant funding request table, and it details the total amount of funding requested from each applicant to operate their approved programs during this biennium. Staff can confirm that the budget projection sheets have been reviewed for alignment with previously approved program proposals, including those approved pathways, in addition to all the specific line items reviewed for administrative flags, such as those missing narratives or incompleteness or ineligible expenses, and that programs were extremely responsive to staff outreach. And with those updated budget projection sheets, there are no identified flags for this commission. So really, at this point, I will turn it over to you all for any questions or flags that maybe you identified or want to discuss further.
Great, thank you, Casey. Commissioner Freeman.
Yeah, just a funding formula question. I know we got at least one letter from one county that said if they didn't get a certain amount, they wouldn't be able to do the program. Is there any thought about what happens to that money if they don't accept it? Does it go back to the other counties and make some of the other ones in a little better shape, or is that a process that happens later?
Commissioner Freeman, thank you so much for that question. I believe it would be up to this commission to decide if there were to be a supplemental funding round. But yes, I mean, to answer your question, that money would not disappear and become unavailable. I don't think that that decision has been made, and I do believe that decision is up to the commission. But yes, Executive Director Keck, feel free to correct me if that is not the right understanding.
There we go. Sorry, that's correct. It would be any funds, I guess, not allocated through your award decisions today would kind of rest until the commission can make a decision about how to proceed with supplemental funds.
And I would just say historically, it really depends on the dollar amount. If it's a small dollar amount, it probably doesn't make sense to go through the process of a supplemental round, but rather just doing a straight allocation on a formula basis. But that would be the commission's decision. So I don't want to put anything out there that we haven't decided. Any other questions?
That's a great answer. Thank you, Chair. Maybe we should put that on our application, put a checkbox, because I get where counties are at. If they can't do it for that amount of money, they would just tell us that. then they could immediately put their portion back into the formula. You could do it all one process that way.
Indeed.
Might help some other counties out.
Yeah. All right, any other, Commissioner Proso?
Thank you, Chair. My question, Casey, largely is, it's my understanding from going back and reviewing the prior presentation where we determined kind of the awards or the how we were going to break down the awards for this phase ultimately, and statistically how we got there, is that House Bill 3069 ultimately calls for us in this phase 2 funding, the 70% of funding that is to be provided to these counties, that we need to use the combined projections of potential populations served in order to make this award. Is that accurate?
Thanks for the question, Commissioner Perosa. I don't have the 3069 language up in front of me right now, but that does ring a bell in terms of interpretation that, yes, it was the specific formula that the commission approved back in October that would be what was applied to the 70% of that funding. And so...
I've heard some frustration amongst colleagues from other counties and stuff about the awards that are being made in here today. And ultimately, we're using enrollment largely to determine, historical and projected enrollment and other measures like that is ultimately determining how much each county ultimately will get. I'll just say for the group that ultimately it's my hope that in the future, that these awards will also, while enrollment's an important factor to be considered, I'm hoping that we can also in the future make awards in part on greater statistical information on programs that are ultimately having success, however we end up defining that, or it is defined. In our awards for this lion's share of the money. I know that there are some programs out there that are extremely frustrated that they feel like they're getting cut despite the fact they're having a tremendous amount of success in their program, their local programs. And I frankly am sympathetic to them in that regard.
Thanks, Commissioner Prosa, for your comments. And yes, I now can confirm from the language of 3069 in item C there, the proportion of funds available to an applicant shall be determined by the commission using the combined projections of potential populations served by the Oregon Behavioral Health Deflection Program. And so I think that this particular funding formula and the process that we have completed is yet a stepping stone to what where we will be in the 27-29 biennium, and it will be I think even a different ball game at that point. But we have heard from counties that same disappointment of not getting the funds that they required to actually operate the programs as they had planned, and they have been very flexible and have adapted, their programs as they could in response to the funding formula and how their allocation was actually represented. But I think it will be up to this commission come that planning for 27-29 and figuring out, not only fidelity to those program population participant projections, what an alliteration, but not only the fidelity to those projections and the performance of these programs over the next 2 years, or I guess a year and a half, since we're already through December, but those will be informed by data as these folks continue to report into the REDCap database, and we can collect that data and continue to monitor the outcomes of these programs. So I think we're on the track to get there, but we hear those frustrations and disappointments, and there was definitely not a perfect solution for this time around.
I think given the mandate from the legislature, we were tasked with an imperfect process where we were required to use projections. And this commission went back and made some changes in the prior meeting to how we weighted projections versus historical. So I totally agree with Commissioner Perosa. I look forward to the day when we are able to define what success is in these programs, because I think that's going to help the counties better craft applications and create programs that are really defined by best practices and what we see as viable metrics for success. Any other comments or questions for Casey? All right, Casey, are we ready for the next step?
I believe so. I have some
Okay.
prepared proposed motion language. This first slide shows all-encompassing, but I
Mhm.
do recall that some members of this commission abstained, and so I tried to capture that here if it was helpful. And I also can navigate back to the funding request table slide if that's of more use during this kind of deliberation process. I'll leave it to you, Chair Solomon.
Yeah, great. I think this will work, what you have up here. So is there someone willing to make a motion to approve the 25-27 BHD Phase 2 funding request? An associated table is shown for all applicants except for Deschutes, Lane, Multnomah, Washington, and Yamhill counties.
This is Commissioner Harnden. I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second
This is-
Commissioner Harris.
All right, we have a motion made by Commissioner Harnden, seconded by Commissioner Harris. Do you have a question, Commissioner Freeman, before we move forward?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm going to vote no on all these, not because I don't believe in the program or wish its success, but the fact that there's no measurement of success individually or collectively feels wrong to me. But again, I'm wishing it well.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Jenny, roll call, please.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
No.
Commissioner Harnden,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman,
Yes.
Commissioner McPherson,
Yes.
Commissioner Norton,
Yes.
Commissioner Perosa,
Yes.
and Chair Solomon.
Yes. All right, moving on to the next one. Is there someone willing to make a motion to approve the 25-27 BHD Phase 2 funding request for Deschutes County?
I'll make the motion.
All right, we have a
Lehman.
motion. Yeah, is there a second?
Chair, this is Commissioner Beach. I'll second.
Great, we have a motion made by Commissioner Lehman, second by Commissioner Beach. Jenny, roll call, please.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
No.
Commissioner Harnden,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
I'll abstain.
Commissioner Lehman,
Yes.
Commissioner McPherson,
Yes.
Commissioner Norton,
Yes.
Commissioner Perosa,
Yes.
and Chair Solomon.
Yes. All right, motion carries. Next up is Lane County. Is there someone willing to make a motion to approve the 25-27 BHD Phase 2 funding for the County of Lane?
I'll move. This is Commissioner Harris.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Commissioner Harnden, yes. Second.
All right, we have a motion made by Commissioner Harris, seconded by Commissioner Harnden. Jenny, roll call, please.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
No.
Commissioner Harnden,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman,
Yes.
Commissioner McPherson,
Yes.
Commissioner Norton,
Yes.
Commissioner Perosa,
I abstain.
and Chair Solomon.
I am also abstaining and declaring an actual conflict of interest as I am a contracted consultant with Lane County on this project. All right, motion carries. Next up is Multnomah County. Is there someone willing to make a motion to approve the 25-27 BHD Phase 2 funding for Multnomah County?
I so
Commissioner
move.
Harnden, I make the motion.
Right,
I
is
will
there a second?
second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Harnden, seconded by Commissioner Perosa. Roll call, please, Jenny.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
No.
Commissioner Harnden,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman,
I will abstain, and I also need to declare an actual conflict as an employee of mine that I directly supervise is a contractor on this project for Multnomah County.
Commissioner McPherson,
I abstain.
Commissioner Norton,
Yes.
Commissioner Perosa,
Yes.
and Chair Solomon.
Yes. All right, we're getting down there. Washington County, is there someone willing to make a motion to approve the 25-27 BHD Phase 2 funding for Washington County?
Chair, this is Commissioner Lehman. I make the motion.
Great. Is there a second?
Commissioner
I'll
Beach.
second.
I'll second. Oop.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Beach won out there. So we have a motion made by Commissioner Lehman, second by Commissioner Beach. Roll call, please, Jenny.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
No.
Commissioner Harnden,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman,
Yes.
Commissioner McPherson,
I abstain.
Commissioner Norton,
Yes.
Commissioner Perosa,
Yes.
and Chair Solomon.
Yes. All right, last up is Yamhill County. Is there someone willing to make a motion to approve the 25-27 BHD funding, Phase 2 funding for Yamhill County?
I'll move. This is Commissioner Harris.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Commissioner Norton
This is a-
seconds.
Okay, I think we have a motion made by Commissioner Harris, seconded by Commissioner Harnden. Jenny, roll call, please.
Commissioner Beach,
Commissioner Harnden, I didn't, I was not the one to make the motion, just so you know. The second.
You did not make the second?
I did not. No, it was
Oh.
not me.
Oh, who was
Commissioner
it that made the
Norton.
second?
Commissioner Norton.
Oh, my apologies. For the record, the motion was made by Commissioner Harris, seconded by Commissioner Norton. Thank you.
Commissioner Beach,
Abstain.
Commissioner Freeman,
No.
Commissioner Harnden,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman,
Yes.
Commissioner McPherson,
Yes.
Commissioner Norton,
Yes.
Commissioner Perosa,
Yes.
and Chair Solomon.
Yes. All right. I think that wraps up the BHD award decisions, but we have a BHD adjustment for the 23-25 funding. And Casey, I believe you're going to walk us through that for the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde.
Indeed, yes, we'll continue right along. So Each quarter, grantees have an opportunity to request an adjustment request as part of their quarterly reporting, and these could be requests to substantively change their program design, or maybe just an adjustment to where they allocated money within their budget, or it could be both. During this second quarterly reporting period for tribal governments, which closed on October 25th, we received one request from the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde that met the threshold for your review, which means that it exceeded 10% of their total award amount that was being reallocated elsewhere, or it contained a substantive programmatic shift. After this meeting, we'll of course notify the grantee if their request was approved or not, and then process it accordingly. You received all the details about this particular request in your meeting materials in advance of today's meeting, but I will detail it for folks now. This overall budget adjustment request from the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde actually contained two small requests to adjust their 23-25 BHD budget. The proposed adjustments reflect some shifts in program implementation and planning needs, and exceeded a movement of funds over 10% of their total award amount, and that is why it is before you today. Specifically, Grand Ronde only needs a portion of their two previously approved substance abuse counselors. This program's not fully operational yet. They're still in this planning mode. One of these approved substance abuse counselors is actually serving as the program coordinator and is doing that liaisonship work and that coordination and planning work. The other previously approved substance abuse counselor has remained vacant. This time they're not actively recruiting. They have vacancy savings to apply, and thinking of the needs for their program, for the remainder of the project period, they wanted to move this funding into portions that could actually help their population now while they continue to plan. So the reallocation total is $126,656.16, which is the total line item of one of those substance abuse counselors that was previously approved. And of that total amount, there'd be $123,876.77 that would go to housing and facilities, specifically for long-term housing and client assistance. The tribes really feel that this money would be better suited to assist tribal members in securing housing and other certain client needs, which of course have been historically a large need for tribal members under other behavioral health programs, and is really their main form of success in gaining sustainability and security for tribal members in need. Another smaller portion of this personnel line item that's being requested to be reallocated, $2,799.39. The request is to move that to training and associated travel, specifically for that project coordinator, that substance abuse counselor position that is remaining in place, to pay for their expenses as they attended the PTAC 2025 International Deflection and Pre-Arrest Diversion Summit that was held at the beginning of this month. So that would pay for any training and associated travel in results to that conference, which they sought out to benefit their planning process as a tribal government. I will pause here to see if there are any questions from this commission or any other details that I could provide.
All right. Any questions for Casey? I have a question for you, Casey, about, I didn't see in the materials anything that talked about the timing in this funding cycle. I wasn't clear whether this funding cycle, because it's 23-25, ended December 31st of this year, or whether, I couldn't remember whether, because this was a not an implementation, but whatchamacallit,
Planning grant.
Planning grant that they started later. Can you tell me what the funding cycle is for them?
Yes, of course. So you are correct. This funding cycle, this planning grant for tribes is on a different project period timeline than that of counties. So the latter memory was the correct one. That project period is April 1st of this year, 2025, through June 30th of next year, 2026.
Okay,
And
great. So
there are those unallocated funds that we'll need to talk about come next year in terms of maybe extending that project period and all that jazz, but not a today problem. So yes, their project period extends through June 30th of next year, 2026.
great, great. That's helpful. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Do you have a motion language for us, Casey?
Indeed.
Great. So is there someone willing to make a motion to approve the Q2 budget adjustment requested from the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde as presented?
This is Commissioner Norton. I'd move to approve the Q2 budget adjustment request from the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde as presented.
Great. Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Lehman. I'll second.
All right. We have a motion made by Commissioner Norton, seconded by Commissioner Lehman. Jenny, roll call, please.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Harnden,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman,
Yes.
Commissioner McPherson,
Yes.
Commissioner Norton,
Yes.
Commissioner Perosa,
Yes.
and Chair Solomon.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Casey.
Yes. Are there any other questions for me?
Any other questions?
Thank you all. I appreciate your attention to these matters.
Yeah, thank you. All right, next up, we're going to hear from Interim Director Keck about the CJC Grant Administration Guide revisions.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. For the record, Ryan Keck, Interim Director, filling in for Rachel, who wasn't able to be here today, and talk to you about a procedural change we've worked on at your all's request. So are you seeing my slides?
Yes.
Fantastic. So I'll say by just way of background, if you didn't know, we do have an administrative guide to provide insight as to our policies or our processes for grant making and or administration after grants are made. We don't always bring that before you all. It depends on whether or not the activity that's being changed or adjusted has some degree of precedent with your approval or a direct impact. And that's what we have today. You just went through a budget adjustment process with Casey. And if you remember, we've done a lot of these over the last biennium or grant cycle. And the request was made a few meetings ago to revisit how we might do that with efficiency in mind. And so just to kind of frame again, like Casey mentioned, there's two ways in which a grant adjustment might be brought to you all: a substantive program change or a reallocation of dollars over 10% of their award. And that number varies immensely depending on the size of the grant. So you may be hearing something in relatively small dollars, changing from one supply area to another supply area just because of that threshold. So I took a look back on the last grant cycle, and you all heard 18 modification requests in the last biennium or so, 11 of which were only focused on this reallocation of money. So the ask was within already approved programming. They just wanted to change maybe where they were putting the dollars, like the request you just heard. What that means is that that takes up time. We don't always have the good fortune of an agenda like today, where we have time to explore some of the topics at greater length than in other agendas like you've experienced the last 6 months. It also means for the recipient that takes nearly 2 months on average for them to get an answer to that request. Conversely, when they are less than 10% under the current policy, staff generally can get that completed within 2 weeks. And so that's the difference that we're looking at. Some of the requests have even taken as long as 3 or 4 months to get fully approved, based on availability, based on when information is received in the scheduling of these meetings. So what we prepared for you all, and it's kind of, we give you the direct language in your material, and I think I have it on one more slide, but as a shift like you see on the screen here. So current practice being on the left. What we propose is separating these two things between two responsibilities between you all and staff. Substantive changes to programming that you approved would still rest with you all. So if a program decided to do something different than what you had heard and approved, whether that means they add to that program or they stop doing something, we would bring that information to you all for approval in the process that you're accustomed to. But if all they're asking to do is change how they're spending their money without altering their programming, we recommend that reside with staff so we can be more efficient in processing those requests for the counties and other recipients and save you all the time during your meeting agendas. So with that, this is the language again that's presented in front of you. It reflects this change in the bullets. I wanted to highlight it and literally did so in green here. A couple of things we also added to help kind of wrap around this process. One is that we added some language to speak to the fact that any and all adjustments need to adhere to the grant specific requirements. So that helps put a little bit more boundary around some of the requests we've received before and the back and forth that either you've had as a commission or with staff taking on some additional responsibility in these reallocations, being able to make clear what some of the grant specific requirements are in order to move or make a reallocation possible. We also are working to bring consistency to the timeline and the predictability of this process while we have the opportunity to bring this before you all. Some grant programs currently only take requests in on a quarterly basis. Others take them as needed and as requested. And it, again, leads to unpredictability and obviously a kind of ebb and flow in workload, both for staff and for you all. So we suggest shifting all requests to a 1 per quarter process. It aligns with our quarterly reporting. It would then allow us to predictably know how many and when we're bringing adjustments in front of you all for large programmatic approvals and how quickly we can address those reallocations internally by staff. And so with that, the motion language is tucked there at the bottom. We as staff recommend that you approve these changes and we would put these into practice beginning with our January reporting period.
Great, thank you, Ryan. Any questions for Ryan? Commissioner Beach.
Thank you, Chair. Just a clarifying question, if I may. So referring to the only one adjustment request to be accepted per quarter, just to clarify, that just means one submission for the whole quarter versus, as an example, the adjustment request we just saw from the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, where they had 2 requests within the one request. So just clarifying exactly what the intent of that language is.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Great question. Yeah, we're clarifying around that submission. So one opportunity per quarter to make a request to change in any number of ways, whether they be singular item to item or a couple of different adjustments like what was just described.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
Thanks, Chair. This may reflect my newness to the commission, so bear with me. But a couple of questions. With something like this, do you normally consult with the grantees? I'm curious if you did, what their feedback was. And then secondarily, how do you normally communicate a change like this to the grantees?
Yeah, so yeah, we're in constant conversation, if you can imagine, based on the number of adjustments on how they go, what they would prefer, and why sometimes things are delayed or which process things are taken. And so we've utilized that feedback in our consideration for this proposal. The communication that will be as we get ready to launch this next quarter's reporting, we would include details about this information or this change with that quarterly process. We'll also be, of course, updating the administrative guide collectively and making sure that the new version is out online and in the hands of all of our recipients.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, well, I'm excited that we're moving forward with this. I had flagged this a while ago, recognizing that we were spending maybe not an inordinate amount of time, but extra time on these really small adjustments that, you know, if you had a county that was receiving a couple $100,000, that 10% threshold could be, you know, pretty low. And it, you know, ultimately was holding up the process of getting those approvals done. So I'm excited that we're able to take this up. Is there someone willing to approve the proposed revisions to section 4.2 of the CJC Administration Guide as highlighted and discussed?
I would
This is-
make that motion. This is Freeman.
All right.
Commissioner Norton seconds.
All right. We have a motion made by Commissioner Freeman, second by Commissioner Norton. Roll call, please, Jenny.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Herndon,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
Commissioner Lehman,
Yes.
Commissioner McPherson,
Yes.
Commissioner Norton,
Yes.
Commissioner Perosa,
Yes.
and Chair Solomon.
Yes. All right. Moving right along. Next up on the agenda, we get to hear from Kelly Officer about the stop report.
Thank you, Chair Solomon and Commissioners. I'm Kelly Officer, Research Director at the CJC, and have a presentation for you today on an overview of the STOP program, informational and updates on this project that is a big lift for CJC every year. I know some commissioners are very familiar with this and are involved every year. For others, it will kind of be a reminder of, oh yes, you know, what's the most recent for that. So feel free to jump in with questions. And the hardest part here, I think, is going to be sharing the slides. Just looks a little different every time. Are you seeing the slides?
Yep.
Yes, excellent. Okay, I can see everybody and some slides. That's exciting. Oh, wait, I'm going to cover you up here. That's okay. All right. So to start with background, House Bill 2355 passed in 2017. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago, and created the STOP program and requires law enforcement agencies across the state to report traffic and pedestrian stop data to CJC. The specific data elements are listed in the bill and are, as you would expect, a summary listed here: date, time, some definition of the location, the reason for the stop, and the outcome or disposition. If a search was conducted, and then the results, if any, the findings of any of the search, and the perceived demographics of the person who was stopped, race, gender, and age. And now if the officer has the person's ID, then we may have the actual gender and age from their identification, but the race is the officer's perceived race of that individual. So there's not a right or wrong answer, and the officer does have to provide what they perceive that person's race to be. Also a reminder that this is data on officer-initiated traffic and pedestrian stops. So it doesn't include calls for service, 911 calls. So this is not all law enforcement activity. This is just those officer-initiated traffic stops. So for some more background, the bill created agency definitions by size, tier 1, 2, and 3 agencies. So there's a table here at the bottom of the slide to give an overview of that. So we collect data from about 150 law enforcement agencies. You know, some are sending it in continuously, some give it to us all at the end of the year in the cadence with this annual reporting. And so the largest agencies across the state, so 12 agencies that have at least 100 officers, had to go first in 2018. So that first report really just had the 1 year of data for the 12 agencies, and then folks have come online since then. So the medium-sized agencies with 25 to 99 officers went the next year. And then the smallest agencies, tier 3, have 1 to 24 officers, and around 100 agencies that fit into that size definition there. The bill does not allow CJC to collect any data identifying the officer who makes the stop. And we're also not allowed to receive any additional information that could identify the person who is stopped. So we have the demographic information, but we do not have the person who was stopped. We don't have their driving history or their criminal history. We're not allowed to have that information. Also a note here, we've been doing this for several years. There is additional information that would likely be helpful in this analysis. The way the STOP repository is set up, we can't just kind of automatically receive that data from agencies, but we have done some additional analyses kind of separate from the STOP reporting if the agency is able to submit the data, and we can pull some of that together as it's made sense. For example, there are some agencies that do a lot of enforcement on highways or freeways. And so the stop type in vehicle could be really helpful. Enforcement for commercial trucking is going to look different than for passenger vehicles, for example. And so we do not have that information. So we are in the annual reporting, at least confined to the variables that are in the program there. And also, the analysis and the results are reported on each year at the agency level. So we're looking at overall trends at that agency level, and that's what we are reporting on. So we'll start here with some nice summary level information. So we're not making any conclusions off of this, but it provides some context. Provides a summary of the data that's provided. So this is monthly counts over the existence of the program of the stops that have been reported to CJC. So that dark blue line at the top are the tier 1, the largest agencies, and then the medium tier 2 in yellow, and then our smallest tier 3 agencies in gray. And so no denying the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic there in early 2020, both for tier 1 and tier 2 agencies. We see that pretty resoundingly. For tier 1, that next pretty substantial drop that actually gets a little bit lower than that initial one is November 2020. And we all kind of have the COVID time warp, but there were some additional restrictions in November 2020 at that time. And then the next kind of lowest drop there for tier 1s is December 2021, January 2022. So we didn't have as many restrictions, but that was the Omicron wave. And so we really had hospitalizations peaking at that time. And we do see that in the volume of stops for the largest agencies. Since then, for tier 1 agencies, a pretty consistent increase. And so it does look like tier 1 agencies are back to pre-COVID levels in terms of volume. Tier 2, doesn't look like back to that pre-COVID level, although we had less than a year of data to tell. And then for tier 3, we didn't have pre-COVID data, so not clear exactly what happened there. So again, we're not making conclusions from this information, but it just provides a summary to kind of start from in terms of the data that is submitted to CJC. So in terms of the analysis that's done, here's a reminder of the language in the bill that directs CJC to analyze the data. We do an annual report December 1st. And so our focus here is really the rigorous analysis of the data to identify statistically significant differences, both in that decision to stop and stop outcomes in terms of what that looks like. So again, the results are at the agency level, and this is looking at aggregate level trends, right? If there's one incident where things worked much differently, we're probably not going to see that in the data, right? We're looking at overall trends of stops and stop outcomes in doing that analysis. So when this started, we were figuring out exactly what the analysis plan was going to be, what it was going to look like. A lot of folks assumed we would do a benchmark comparison, which can be really helpful for context, but is really challenging in terms of, this assumption of look at the distribution of the traffic stop data and then compare that to something that makes sense, right? Maybe it's residential population. It could be crash data, something like that. And again, it can be helpful for context, but it's really challenging in terms of drawing any conclusions or having anything substantive come from that. So as an example, here's an example of those challenges. So on the left-hand side is a estimate of non-resident or tourist populations across different parts of the state. We have some very beautiful places in Oregon, which is a lot of tourism, recreation, traffic. And then that can be pretty substantial in different parts of the state. And then on the right, just as an example for Little Silverton, Oregon, this is a tool from the census that looks at differences from where people live versus where they work. So this shows a pretty substantial number of people traveling into Silverton for work, and then a pretty substantial number of folks traveling out of Silverton to work as well. So the driving population is going to look different from the residential population. And so when we do that benchmark comparison, it's hard to draw any strong conclusions from that in terms of analyzing the traffic stop data. So what we do is we do 3 different sets of analyses that take into account different components of the stop. And we'll kind of have a high level here. We'll go through each one specifically, but we do an analysis called decision to stop, looking, at that initial stop decision and what that looks like. And then we do an analysis just specific to stops where a search is conducted, and look at search findings rates, and then look at outcomes, so rates of arrest and citation, and compare differences for those outcomes. So several different analysis approaches to analyze different components of the stop, and accounting for, the other variables that we have in the data here. So before we jump too into the weeds here, we could have, so that we sent you the 2025 report. All the reports are up on the website and have been submitted. So instead of kind of diving into the details of one specific report, we wanted to show some of the results kind of compiled over the most recent 3 years. So our most recent 3 reports, kind of just give a higher level view of what those are showing. And so instead, we're just going to report the results as the number of agencies that showed a statistically significant difference for each of the analysis methods that we had here. So first up, okay, we're going to jump into some statistics here. It's going to be great. So first up is the decision to stop model. In the literature, it's called Veil of Darkness. And so this is a clever comparison to compare stops when it is light, when it was dark, compared to when it is dark. So using the inner twilight windows with variations of light and dark conditions throughout the course of the year, we are able to do that comparison. So for example, on December 12th, if somebody is stopped at 5:30, it is dark. On June 12th at 5:30, if somebody is stopped, it is light. And so using those time windows and making that comparison of stops when it is light versus dark is the basis of this particular statistical model. And so we are also able to include controls for the other variables that we have. So we can account for differences in the day of week, the reason for the stop, the age and gender of the driver, the variables that we do have in that stop repository. We can account for differences there as well. So after accounting for those differences, do we see a higher rate of certain groups stopped when it is light compared to when it is dark, is the result here. So this table gives a summary of the findings of this test over the last 3 years reports. So for example, in 2023, there were 2 agencies that showed a statistically significant difference here. So one tier 1 large agency showed a difference for Black drivers, and one small tier 3 agency showed a difference for Hispanic drivers. And so then you can see in 2024, that looked different, right? We didn't actually see a difference for tier 1 agencies, but did for tier 2 and tier 3. And then in 2025, saw a difference for 3 tier 3 agencies. So what we want to show here is that the results really look different each year. It is a big lift for our research team to do this report each year, but it's crucial that things change, right? We do see different results each year. We also see a mix by agency size, right? It's not just the largest agencies where we'll find a difference in the analysis. As you can see, we do have some of the smaller tier 3 agencies will show differences here. And then in this particular test, we don't see a lot of the same agency showing up over multiple years. We did have one tier 3 agency that had a statistically significant difference in 2023 and 2024. So we did have one repeat agency there. We did not find a difference for that particular agency in 2025. So things did change. I think that speaks to a couple things. I think in terms of law enforcement capacity and resource, that can change, and that can change really quickly. And then also perhaps decisions about how enforcement is allocated can change as well. And also just underlying traffic patterns can change. And so it is pretty crucial to be able to do this each year. And within a relatively quick period of time, keep up with the analysis in terms of those changes over the last kind of reporting cycle there. The next test is the search findings analysis. So this is looking at a subset of stops where a search was conducted. So we're only looking at stops where there was a search, and then looking at those search finding rates. The literature calls it hit rate. So whether something was found in the course of conducting the search. If those search finding rates are different, and if they're different at a statistically significant level, that's what this test would identify. So you can see for this year's report, there were 2 larger tier 1 agencies for Hispanic individual search, and then in 2024, 1 tier 1 agency. So for this particular test, we do need a sample size of at least 30 in each race ethnicity group in order to do the analysis. So for this, we do see some of those sample size considerations where there are more of those smaller agencies where we're not able to conduct the test because we just do not have a large enough sample size. And those agencies did not do 30 searches across the 2 groups in order to do the comparison. But this one is pretty crucial in that decision to search, thinking about the impact of the stopped individual, that decision to search is impactful. And so we do want to do that additional analysis for this particular test as
Ellie,
well.
I think we got a question for you from Commissioner Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So is this data the search findings or the decision to search?
This particular analysis that I just went through is the kind of combined, the decision to search and then whether something is found in the course of the search. So really focusing on the search findings piece. In the next test, we will just look at the just was the person searched, yes or no. And that looks at that search decision a little bit differently.
The reason I asked that because the decision to search certainly could be based upon, the criteria of race, but what they find if you're using statistically that, you assume that everybody would have the same ratio of find, you'd have to be assuming that the crime level amongst every race would be the same. And I don't know how you could baseline that, right? I mean, I do agree with the idea that the decision to search should be, per capita the same, but I always want to be careful with using statistics that somehow make an assumption of some fact that we can't prove.
Yeah, Commissioner Freeman, thank you for the feedback. We've, we wrestle with the different components of this in the analysis. The hit rate piece does have the peer-reviewed literature to support it, and there is some kind of underlying criminology theory, right? Of if individuals are kind of carrying contraband, if different racial groups are carrying contraband at the same rate, then that search findings rate should be consistent. And so it's kind of based on this assumption that if the search finding rate for one particular race is substantially lower than another one, it's worth looking into further. And so I guess that kind of gets me to a point of, for agencies that are showing differences on these analyses, we do give them the opportunity to say, hey, we can look into this in more detail, right? Kind of unpack what this is looking like and see what those underlying trends are. that could be driving some of those components with that piece. And for this one, we do run into some of that just in terms of how the data is reported at times and what it looks like there. So sometimes there's an underlying data reporting issue that we got to untangle in the course of this.
Well,
And sometimes there are specific offenses that will kind of rise up as well.
so I want you to think about this. Almost a third of the Interstate 5 that's in Oregon goes through Douglas County. So Douglas County has a small population. So ratio wise, the number of people that are hauling drugs through Douglas County compared to the number of people here is pretty darn high. If they happen to get caught, and if they happen to be of one of these particular races, and whether they're a cartel member or somebody else, they're going to click off one of these things. And I want to make sure folks understand the decision to stop is different than the decision to search, or decision to stop, search, and then finding things on the freeway here. Sometimes it's a pretty high ratio. It just happens to be that is a conduit for drugs going north and south. So you find a lot, and I hope that isn't, being somehow construed as some kind of a motivation around race. It's really around the fact that it's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I think for specific agencies that have a lot of that drug trafficking enforcement activity, that's something we can tease apart in the data when we follow up on this. Really, for this one, what really will impact this is DUI enforcement. And some of the searching around that. And so it gives the agency a chance to unpack what that is looking like. And so if a particular agency did have that kind of drug trafficking increase, right, and that was a change for the work that they were doing, that's what we would be testing for. Also here, a significant difference here is when, so for example, for the tier 1 agency in 2025 that had the difference for searches of Hispanic individuals, it was when that findings rate is significantly lower, right? We're finding things less often. That's what the analysis is flagging for. But there's a lot of nuance here and a lot of things that can impact this. And so I think that chance to work with agencies to kind of unpack what's driving it has been helpful as well.
Kelly, I've got a question, and this has to do with the officer perception of race, and it's always struck me as kind of the weakest part of the STOP data. And I'm curious about a couple of things. One, whether there's training that's provided for officers to help them better discern race more accurately, and whether we know through other studies nationally or elsewhere that illustrate what is the accuracy of officers predicting race correctly.
Sure. Chair Solomon, those are excellent questions. When we start looking, even in our other administrative data sources, right? When we start looking at, race, ethnicity identification of individuals, it gets a lot more complicated than it seems like it would initially. Definitely is a challenge there. So DPSST has a training process set up for the STOP data through their course of doing this work. Specific agencies can also do additional training. I don't know that training gives the how to accurately identify somebody's race. And really the bill specifically says the officer's perception, right? So if the officer thinks somebody is Hispanic and they're actually Asian, what we want to know is that the officer's best guess was that the person was Hispanic. Now, for officers that are working in communities and neighborhoods, they should know the communities and neighborhoods that they are working in. They should have an understanding of that population. Now, for agencies that are doing a lot of that highway and freeway activity, that's definitely more challenging, right? You really just have the short interaction of the stop to make the best guess of what that looks like. What we have seen from other criminal justice administrative data sources, For example, data from Department of Corrections, where we have race ethnicity of folks that are on supervision and serving prison sentences. We have had, gosh, we could do a whole presentation just on this, but we did get a chance from DOC to get some information on how individuals self-report race ethnicity compared to what was in the administrative data. And there's actually research in other areas outside of the criminal justice world that confirms also some of these challenges. When compared to what folks will self-identify versus what somebody working at Department of Corrections will identify the person as, it tends to undercount Hispanic and Native American individuals and misclassify them as white, is what we have seen in the data there.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, I still have my slides up. I do. Okay. Okay. So, and then for the final analysis, which has a lot of information here, is where we're looking at the stop outcomes component. And so we are analyzing whether we see different rates of citation, search, or arrest across racial groups. And after doing some balancing and matching of the data, the stats term is propensity score matching. And so we are balancing across, again, the data that we have in the stop repository to make groups that look equal across those components. So the reason for the stop, time of day, day of week, age and gender of the driver, and then after balancing across those components, do we see higher citation, search, or arrest rates by race? Now this one has had some changes to it over the years. Initially, we just had the reason for the stop. We did not have the reason for the outcome. So for example, if somebody was stopped for speeding and received a citation, that was the information we had. And we very quickly realized, hey, it would be really helpful and important to also know what the citation was for, right? Was the citation for speeding? We want to know that. Was the citation for something else? And is that something else contributing to the differences we are seeing in those outcomes? We saw that it was, and so we do have a way for agencies to now submit that additional data to us. And it's been a work in progress, but more have been able to do it. There are a few that have had some technology challenges and have not been able to do it, but we're still working on getting that particular information included there as well. So we have several outcomes of analysis here. So this first table here is looking at differences in the arrest outcome. So for this year's report, we did have one larger agency that showed a higher arrest rate for Black individuals, and you can see what that looked like in 2024 and 2023. And so for this outcome, it is helpful. So we have the reason for the stop. It's also to have the reason the individual was arrested to also include in that. And we do see that those most common reasons for arrest tend to be DUI enforcement, driving under the influence, and if the person has a warrant. And so if the agency has submitted that information to us, we can account for that in the analysis. And then this table has whether the individual was searched. So starting with all stops, and then was an individual searched, yes or no, that decision to conduct the search there. And so we do have those findings here over the last 3 years. Again, you can see they're a little bit different each year. And we also see differences, that search decision is different from the arrest decision. So we see differences across those outcomes as well. Okay, and then finally, here are the citation results. So agencies that show a higher, statistically significant, higher citation rate for different groups. Now here, this is the outcome where we find the most differences across the agencies. And I think, as folks may not be too surprised by, Hispanic individuals, right? Agencies that show a different for Hispanic individuals and that higher citation rate is the analysis where we do see the most number of findings of that statistically significant difference. We've done a lot of work to unpack that particular component there. So again, if that agency is able to provide that additional data on the reason for the citation, we can kind of pull that apart and see which components are driving some of those differences, and then also account for some of that in the analysis as well. So when we first started to incorporate this information into the analysis, there are certain offenses, where an officer doesn't usually have a whole lot of discretion in terms of writing the citation, where we were seeing that really driving some of the differences. And so those, for most of the agencies where we've pulled this apart, it tends to be citations for offenses, compliance offenses, such as driving while suspended, driving without a license, and driving without insurance. And so sometimes the agency will have a policy saying the officer has to write the citation in that scenario. And then other times, even if the policy is not there, there's not a lot of discretion at that point. But that can inform how the agency addresses the differences that are coming through with that one. And then finally, we have an any, just a kind of an overall, where citation, search, or arrest. You can see it tends to be similar to the citation outcome, but there are a few differences in there. So we do still run the analysis for the any component too, as well, to add another outcome to the mix for the analyses that are conducted there. And I will, that concludes my presentation. I'll gladly take any more questions.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Any other questions for Kelly?
Hi, Kelly. This
Commissioner
is
Norton. Oh,
sorry.
Commissioner Norton and Commissioner Lehman go after.
Yeah, Kelly, I just wanted to know, once you've finished your final analysis after you reached out to the agencies and that kind of stuff, is that information shared back to them? Or will that information be shared back to them?
Yeah, that excellent question. The annual report is released December 1 each year. And so we put it on our website. It goes to the legislature governor's office. So that has that initial all agencies results. And then if an agency, both if they want to do some additional digging into some of their findings, we can share that back with them, or every once in a while they can get us some extra data to do a component with that too. So sometimes there's just a PowerPoint slide with a couple tables to walk them through. Sometimes we'll do like a 3-page memo so that they can have that information. And DPSST also provides advice and technical assistance. And so there is a mechanism for DPSST to present that information to the county board of commissioners, I think, or maybe it's the LPSC, for the DPSST to present to the county LPSC on the technical assistance provided.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lehman.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kelly. So I was wondering, given the analysis, sometimes especially when we get to the small tier 3 agencies, that significant difference isn't always the end all be all of statistical analysis. Sorry for the room. This is a nerdy stats question. And so did you all do any kind of power analysis or effect size on these measures to know, to think a little bit about this? Obviously, like, PPV is going to have a large number of cases, so they're going to get much more likely to get a significant difference than, say, something in a small rural agency. So
yeah, Commissioner Lehman, we have most definitely kicked that around quite a bit within our team. And actually the highest volume is Oregon State Police. And so we will see where, in that citation finding, right, it may be just 2 percentage points, and you kind of look at it and you go, oh, is that really substantial? But sure enough, that p-value is less than that 0.05 and really shows up there. Flip side, right, a small agency, we might kind of see that 5-10% difference and not seeing, not getting to that magical 0.05 p-value comparison there. So we do, on the dashboard, we have kind of the estimates regardless of the p-value there, so kind of see what that looks like. On the search finding ones, it's a little trickier, right? Because if you're like, oh, I've got 10 searches, well, I can't do much here. But on the citation outcomes, at least, we can see the those magnitude differences and what that is looking like. Kind of tracking over time there too. But it does, some do have pretty low sample sizes. So I think there's kind of, there's the, hey, You kind of you're kind of scooting by versus like, oh, it's just really small. So that there's some nuance within that as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, Kelly. As always, I know this is a lot of work for your team. I appreciate the presentation. Okay, next up, I think is our last item on the agenda. We get to hear from Interim Director Keck on agency updates.
Sure. Back again, just a couple of updates for y'all. One, as a way of informational. So House Bill 2930 was passed and goes into effect in January as it relates to conflicts of interest. The main change that we've been made aware of and to pass along to you all is that now household members are considered in the list of individuals that could lead to you having an actual or a potential conflict. So I wanted to make you aware of that because it takes effect on January 1. Also want to let you know that as we're working with DOJ and the Ethics Commission to see about getting a training together for you all during one of your in-person meetings here in the early part of the new year is the goal. So once we get that situated, I will let you know. But I wanted to at least make you aware of the change. And then certainly if you have any questions, I'm probably not the person to ask, but the Ethics Commission will be the entity to reach out to and confirm any questions you might have about your particular circumstances. Second, just a heads up, next meeting, we've shifted to the front end of the month for the 2026 calendar year. So we'll be seeing you much sooner. That'd be in January 6th, again, in a virtual platform. Given the holidays, we're going to try to get that agenda out to you Friday of this week. So you'll see what we've got. Right now, we have at least the Restorative Justice Grant Award decisions to be made. We also received a protest related to the retail theft grant. So we'll need to be take that up should you all choose. Probably a couple other informational presentations. The memos I will attempt to get to you at the same time and or by Monday, the 22nd. So you have those in hand and a chance to review before the January 6th meeting. With that, unless there are questions, I of course just want to wish everybody a happy holidays as we close out.
Great. Any questions for Brian? All right. Thank you all for another good meeting. Get out of here a little bit early, and I will echo Ryan's good wishes for the holidays and the new year. See you all in 2026.
Happy holidays.
Thank
See you
everybody.
next year.
Bye-bye.